Hi, it's Peter and Kathleen with another episode of Health Declassified. And today we're going to be talking about a really interesting subject. Have you ever heard of Green Goo? But before we start on Green Goo, let's get hold of Kathleen and introduce her. Hi, Kathleen, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Peter, and thank you also very much for tuning in. And yes, have you ever heard of Green Goo? Well, no worries because we're going to get right into that in just a moment. But first, let's welcome our guest for today, Jodi Scott. Hello, Jodi. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hello. Wonderful. So great to
Hi,
be here
Jody.
with you all.
Well, Jodi holds a master's in health psychology, specializing in psychoneuroimmunology. Together with her sister and mother, I love this, they created a company called Green Goo that specializes in plant-based products that range from personal care to first aid. So let's just jump right in. Jodi, all of your products come from plant-based ingredients, as we just said, but why were you all drawn to this specific approach?
Oh my goodness. There's so many layers to this question and I love it. So, well, first of all, my sister's an herbalist and a midwife, and then I was pre-med, my master's in in health psychology and then specialized in psychoneuroimmunology. And so we've always had this passion for the relationship of plants and mind-body medicine. And what's fascinating about plants, so when my sister was in herb school, is when she first learned the practice of making medicine from plants. So tinctures, supplements, topical therapeutics. And when she first introduced to me what she was making in herb school, we were just so impressed with how well these products worked. And what I found really interesting is, we had been on this natural journey for a long time. We had clean food, organic food, clean personal care products. But when you opened up our first aid cabinet, there was a lot of junk in it. And I was willing to make that exception. No sustainability, one-time use, not great ingredients. And so, my sister shared with me these topical therapeutics, and we thought, okay, I would like to invite this into my own home and see if they work.
Mhm.
And I was absolutely blown away by the efficacy of these products. And it was something I had not seen before in terms of, yes, you choose natural because it's cleaner and it's better for you. But when you actually see the plants perform and do something that you didn't know that they could do, like heal a rash that you were told only these chemical laden products could do the job, it's
Mhm.
pretty impressive. And so, here we are, we start making these topical therapeutics, and we are at the farmer's market. And we are the longest line at the farmer's market, and moms are coming to us crying because their son who had eczema is now not embarrassed and willing to go to school. Another individual who had multiple surgeries and chronic pain used our pain relief product and now is out doing the things that he enjoyed doing before. People are lifting up their shirts, showing us their gashes from, their weekend adventures. And we're like, wow, like we're not the only ones experiencing this. And so, fast forward, I started looking at the first aid space in general, and I went, oh my goodness, we're not alone. The natural consumer is willing to abandon their natural ethos because they're told products like Neosporin, hydrocortisone, calamine are the only products that can get the job done.
Mhm.
And then the conventional consumer is, I don't really care what the ingredients are. I just want something that works better. And what was fun for us is that, going back to your question of why do we love the plants? To be able to bring these plants to the consumer without the other ingredients that cause harmful impacts to ourselves and to the environment. They're free of petroleum, forever chemicals, phthalates, fragrances, these endocrine disruptors. And so what I love about the plants, and really most of our medicine that we have today was inspired by plants and then reproducing the same effect in a lab.
Right.
And so plants are not just trendy, the plant-based renaissance that's here today. Plants can actually even exceed expectations than these traditional products that we see on the market that have these other ingredients that are harmful. And so I love this idea that we can really challenge ourselves to have a cleaner, healthier life without some of these other ingredients that we just don't need.
Right.
And
Hmm.
obviously have a better impact on our health and wellness and the environment.
Mm,
Wonderful.
interesting. So, Jody, you mentioned calamine lotion. Now, that was, my age. I grew up as a kid in the 50s and in Africa, and any rash or even sunburn, my mother would come out with a calamine lotion and daub it all over us. And we thought that was an old-fashioned remedy that was actually quite safe. Am I wrong in that?
Again, there's just, I don't think the Industrial Revolution, where a lot of these ingredients were born from, intended to hurt anyone.
Ah,
So yes, there are still ingredients in there that you don't need. And really it's kind
okay.
of interesting when you think about where these came from. So the Industrial Revolution came manufacturing and bringing products to people's homes that had not been done before. And this idea that one, we didn't have the technology or the roads that we have today. So products couldn't get from a manufacturing facility to someone's home quickly. So we needed preservatives.
Hmm.
We also have this idea that more volume made us feel like we had better value. So we had to stuff a lot of extras in there
To
so
get the
that someone could
volume.
go, I want this to last longer. I want more value. And of course, today we can get a product from a manufacturing facility to someone's home, especially if it's made in the USA, in less than 6 weeks. And we have the knowledge now to know what ingredients can act as preservatives to increase that shelf life. So
Right.
there are cleaner solutions.
Okay. No, thanks for that. I thought it was like a traditional remedy that was plant-based. I'm obviously wrong on that one. So here's a question for you. I try and use organic products both for nutrition and for first aid and generally for health, but some of them are really expensive. And I read, maybe it was on your website, that organic products costs mean that only about 1% of the population can afford to use them extensively. Why should that be?
Mm.
Well, our goal is to make organic more affordable and more available. And there's a couple data points as to why the end consumer
Mhm.
has not had access to some of these products or cleaner organic ingredients. One, there was this idea that organic farming is more expensive.
Hmm.
Traditionally, across the board, they're pretty fixed costs, organic versus non-organic, but the demand is not as high. So you have these smaller farmers who have the same fixed costs, but they don't have the scale or the demand to be able to bring volume and profitability to the bottom line. So what I love empowering the consumer is the more we are able to vote every time we purchase for those organic ingredients, we are advocating for those farmers to be able to stay in business and expand and make it more
Hmm.
affordable. In conjunction, which is really interesting in the health food industry in general, um, because they were smaller demand in the marketplace as well, they had to get more creative in how they were going to sell these products. So when you would walk into a natural health food store, most of the products on the shelf, if they are new to the store, they were free. So the manufacturer, the person making the product, actually had to give free fill to a store in order to get on the shelf.
Get on the
So what
shelf. Wow.
happens is,
Mm.
and that became a pervasive trend in the natural industry. And so what happened was the company making the product obviously had to recover that cost in some way, shape, or form and increase their price point.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so again, this idea that if we can make organic more affordable and more available, we're going to increase the demand, which changes it. Now, what's wonderful is you find organic in your regular grocery store today, and that has
Yes.
been helping bringing that cost down,
Price is down, right.
which is great. Now, for us, it's like, let's bring this even further. So, with our first aid products, Green Goo in particular, we want our products to be multi-use, multifunctional, so that you don't have, I'm going to go spend 10 or $15 on a single use product for a single use case that I may only use for
Mhm.
6 weeks. And then by the time I need it again, it's expired. So your first aid cabinet just clutters up and the expenses go up.
Right.
So, for example, our Green Goo first aid product, It is your first aid kit in one little tin. So it's not just for cuts and scrapes.
Okay.
It is for bug bites, bee stings, poison ivy. You can use it for hemorrhoids, tattoos. Um, it is your Swiss Army knife for first aid, all in one
Okay.
little container. And so what you'll find is you didn't even know you needed it and how much you use it because you're like, oh, this works for this blister I have or this ingrown toenail I have. And and then you're even prescribing when someone else gets a cut or a scrape. You're like, hey, I've got this
Try
solution for
this.
you.
Right.
And it takes the
Yeah.
sting and the itch out. So like kiddos, for example, when they get a scrape, there's that emotional moment where the sting really hurts. And when you
Mhm.
give them a Band-Aid, it's not actually doing anything. You're just giving them the Band-Aid to kind of
No.
buy that time as they journey the pain. And so, and you're not going to give your child an over-the-counter chemical tube of an antiseptic and say, here you go. And so, but you can with Green Goo, and it actually does take the sting and the itch out. So the kiddos get to have that fun autonomy. Goo goo for my boo boo, put that on, take the sting and the itch out, and then set it and go. And so, one of the other solutions for us in terms of trying to reduce the clutter in your first aid cabinet is also reducing the costs and
Mhm.
having all of our products have a more everyday multifunctional use component to it as we continue in this plant renaissance and this cleaner, healthier new chapter of having more than just the early adopters or the one percenters having access to these products. And we can start bringing the cost down and the demand up for everyone.
Wow.
Okay, interesting. Sorry, can I just follow that one up with a question on costs when you were talking about cost of organic product? If we look, I've been a farmer for quite a lot of my life. Um, Now I grow a few plants for myself organically, but prior to that, growing conventionally. And the big problem with trying to grow organically was the cost of production. And in other words, this is going to sound terrible, but it was much cheaper to spray Roundup and go minimum till than it is to do three or four more operations with a tractor for heavy disking or plowing and cultivating or get people in with hose, right? So you grow a lot of your own crops, I know, and we're going to get onto that in a moment. How do you keep the costs down when you have to use more manual operations?
I mean, that's a great question. And I think, this area has advanced a lot in the last 10 to 15 years in terms of more clean alternatives that are available that help bring the labor down, but still act in a way that will reduce microbial infections and fungal
Okay.
infections and so forth, which has been great because, to your point, that was a gap that really needed to be filled in order for us to be able to scale clean organic farming without
Mhm.
having astronomical, increases in labor for sure.
Okay. Oh, that's good news. Kathleen, back to you.
So, Jody, how did you acquire the knowledge to put together all of your product line? I know you said your sister Jen is an herbalist, but you have quite a selection in your product repertoire. So I mean, did you do also the testing that, this is good for this, this, and this? How did that work?
Well, I'll back up. So, our love for plants started young in the sense of we grew up in the military, we moved around a lot, and my mom loved plants. And she didn't want to grow a garden and then in 3 months have to move again. So, we had a lot of potted plants that would move with us, which was always pretty hysterical. And they became kind of like our anchor because we get to the new home, we'd be sad, and mom would pull her plants out of the car, and then she'd have her little herb garden, and we'd have our dinner. And it was like, oh, okay, plants are our home. And one time we were moving, and as we're like swatting the plants, as we're in the car crying, and we're like, Mom, why do we have all of these plants? I mean, back up. We knew why we had the plants, but we are like, Mom, why do we have all of these boxes of beauty care products? We get why the plants are here, but why are the beauty care products here? And by the way, Mom, you've been moving with these products every time and you're never using them. Like it was one of those moments where you're like, I will never do that, the never mom parent moment. And she's like, well, we can't send those with the movers because they're flammable. And they're combustible. And we're like, you put something that's flammable on your skin? And that was a big eye opener for my sister and I, who were athletes, and we were looking at clean ingredients and we were going, wow, you know, that's something that we never thought of and started looking at labels more intensely with this idea of we were, runners, competitive runners and swimmers, and we wanted to make sure that we could perform at our optimal rate. And so, fast forward, my sister goes to herb school. We've been working in health food stores. I get my master's in health psychology, focusing on pre-med. And it's been a really wonderful having sort of this like plant rooted love for nature. And at a very young age, exposed to plants and plant care and using them. My mom taking the aloe plant when we had a burn and bringing that over, combined with my sister's knowledge and then my organic chemistry. It was a beautiful marriage, if you will, in terms of being able to take that and scale it. Now, all of our products are registered with the FDA. My sister, the herbalist, would say, we would love if we could acknowledge more of the herbs as active ingredients, but I only call out the herbs that the FDA recognizes as active, and we can only reference them as the FDA recognizes them. So, where the calendula flower has anti-yeast, antimicrobial, antifungal properties, regenerative properties, increases oxygen to the air to the injury site, FDA calls it an astringent. So that's what we call it. and
Okay.
um and so, and then what's really interesting too is when you look at the back of a traditional label, there's a lot of inactive ingredients that are never on the label.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us at Green Goo, we make sure that we're calling out the active and the inactive so that you have all these wonderful botanical profiles. So the FDA has come a long ways in terms of doing their research and saying, here's what the herbs do and why,
Mm-hmm.
that can be use case in the market and how you reference them when you're using them in the way that they use them. Most of our research is anecdotal, meaning our customers that come to us. John Hopkins has been using our dry skin formula in their scleroderma and skin condition department for over a
Ah,
decade,
wow.
Wow.
which has been, and they were the ones who came to us who said, our patients are using your product. We don't know who you are. What are you doing over here? And then in addition to that, gave us recommendations on future product development. So for example, it was great that we had these salves to be able to put on hot spots, but most of the time outside of that, people who are suffering from these chronic skin conditions are going, well, what else can I be doing or not do throughout the day that are going to impact my flare ups? And they said, we'd really love if you had some kind of a wash because we're finding that, the washes that they're using in the shower are also acting to contribute to the flare ups. So then
Hmm.
we came out with our eczema wash. But our customers do a phenomenal job of sharing with us their experiences. Jane Doe number one was the first person pulled from the World Trade Center, and she suffered extensive injuries and eventually became dependent on opioids as a part of her chronic pain journey. She reached out to us and said our pain relief salve was the only product that was helping her as she was going through the opioid withdrawals. And could we make a bigger container for her? So thankfully, customer service escalated that to me. We were able with my sister to give her larger containers and, sharing with us as she was going through these withdrawal symptoms, how it helped with the inflammation and also the pain from going through what's very much like a seizure as you're reducing your dosage down.
Right.
And
Wow.
so it's been really incredible to have such a direct relationship with our customers and the sharing that they do, from whether it's from wound care to chronic pain to the chronic skin conditions, and then also giving us more insight to what we could be doing more with these products and sharing their use case.
Very good. Wow. Incredible. Now, I know that you're farmers as well. Do you grow all your own plants and herbs?
We don't grow the herbs for our products anymore.
Ah,
We still have our farm. We still grow everything that is in our products and then some. In the early days, we did grow everything or we would wildcraft. And it was, I think, some of our most favorite days in building Green Goo, where we'd all be out in the garden harvesting and then we would dry them on old screen doors, and we would,
Hmm.
eventually there was layers and layers of screen doors of drying the plants and then taking them through the extraction process. At one point, we had to put an outdoor kitchen in our house because we were using our indoor kitchen for all of the production, and we had to cook outside in order for us to have our food. Now we source all of our ingredients from farmers all over the world, looking for regenerative farming, fair trade, and so forth. But what's been really sweet about our process is that we've been able to protect that. So we still bring the plants to our manufacturing facility, take them through that extraction process where we yield the highest amounts of the medicinal properties from these plants, put those unique blends of oils in the products. And so you can't get this botanical profile anywhere. And it was really sacred to us to be able to protect that process because a lot of what you see on
Hmm.
the market has extracts or additional ingredients that does change the efficacy of the products. And that is why our products work is really the process and being able to bring in that rich entourage effect of that
Hmm.
botanical profile into these products.
Right.
Wow, very
Well,
good.
so we're running a little bit of short on time here, but we still have a couple of questions that we want to get through. So tell us about the product line because they do range from personal care right through to first aid.
Yes, so we talked a little earlier about the first aid product, which is sort of your
Yeah.
Swiss Army knife. That's what people most know us for. Our repair product is our number one selling product. This is the skin repair that is an afterburn scar, anti-aging formula, which is really
Mm.
wonderful. It helps with puffy eyes, fine lines, elasticity, hydration. Really, it is your head to toe moisturizer. And when you think about this, it's really bringing in sort of personal care and first aid and marrying the two, where you don't need a lotion, but it's more nutritive skincare from head to toe. We have a pain relief product, which we briefly talked about, very high in the arnica infusion. We have professional NFL athletes that love this product as an after workout recovery balm. We have the dry skin formula that John Hopkins uses in their scleroderma and skin condition department. And one that I really love is we have a free to breathe, which is a vapor rub alternative that also acts as a sleep solution. So you can put it on the
Ah.
bottom of your feet and it has some sleep antiviral properties. Those are kind of the core of the first aid, but we also do have nutritive deodorant where underneath your arm is a very high absorption rate, 70 plus percent.
Hmm.
And so it's a great opportunity to not only eliminate bad ingredients or harmful ingredients, but include nutritive ones. So there's echinacea, ginkgo biloba, functional mushrooms, ashwagandha, holy basil. So a wonderful opportunity to have that sort of, you know, uh, high absorption rate where it's going to benefit you as well.
That is particularly interesting because, as someone on the show a few months ago said, most people, women in particular, you take this deodorant, which is full of stuff you shouldn't be putting anywhere near your skin, and you put it under your arms, which is A, as you just said, high absorption, and B, close to all your lymph nodes and your breasts. And why are you surprised women get breast cancer? Remember that one, Kathleen?
I
Can't
do.
think who it was. Somebody was telling us that story. Yeah. So that's a really good one to think about. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Wow.
I really
Wow.
want to evolve the deodorant more because I think there's just very interesting opportunity there for a more systemic nutritional opportunity.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm, mm. So just again, picking up from your website, your first aid line was developed for people who couldn't afford um, mainstream medical care. What was the motivation for that, Joni?
The inspiration actually for that particular product too, the first aid, which became sort of the flagship of our product development across the board, was in the early 2000s there, or mid 2000s, I guess, there was the typhoon that happened in the Philippines, and my sister
Hmm.
went there to go help birth babies, being the midwife. And what she found really interesting was that she would go into these remote locations and she would have to bring these big duffel bags full of medical care. And when she got to the remote location, really what she needed was to bring food for this woman who had like preeclampsia and more nutrition. And because you had so much complicated medical care in there, you couldn't take care of some of the more immediate needs
Hmm.
that were necessary. And she thought, wouldn't it be great if we had more portable first aid? And so she said that, and that's when the light bulb went off. And I said, oh my goodness, like we could be doing more than just a topical antiseptic and perhaps kind of revolutionize how first aid is, because now it's going to be more affordable, it's going to be multifunctional, but it's also going to be portable where you can take these into these remote locations, reduce what's in that duffel bag, and bring in medical care that may be able to address some other issues. Because wound care really is the number one issue in some of these third world countries. And
Hmm.
yet they still suffer from a lot of the other medical conditions that we
That's
have here in, Western civilization, but they just can't be addressed.
yeah.
And then also, bring in food and so forth. And so that was really the catalyst and the inspiration for thinking in that lens.
Okay. Good one.
Well, we are running
Kathleen.
short on time, but how do people contact you, Jodi, and how do they get their products? And do you ship all over the world?
Currently, we're only shipping to US and Canada. However, if you would like to have the products and you do not live in the US, just email me. We absolutely can make that happen, and we do it on a regular basis. And that way we can and work through the shipping. My email address is Jodi, Jodi, at green, Green, goo, Goo, helps, like we're helping people, HELPS.com. And then you can also find us at www.greengoo.com and also Amazon.
Wonderful.
And
Last
for
words,
people,
Peter.
yeah, well, for people who are listening, those details will be in the description on whatever platform you happen to be listening to this on. I have to ask you quickly, it's unusual for three members of the same family and two different generations to work successfully and happily in a business together. What's your secret?
Yeah, love, love and respect. We really
Good.
honor everyone's talents, and everyone has their lane, and we trust that each other has it. And by having that deep rooted respect, we can all collaborate and also trust that we are going to get the job done. And we know we have each other's backs at the end of the day. So if we have to have a tough conversation, we move through that tough conversation and we're back on track. And I tell you what, it is the greatest gift of all, being able to do business with all of them. It's the greatest joy, and I absolutely can't imagine
Excellent.
it any other way.
Oh, fantastic. And this has now evolved into
And
a full-time a job for all three of you, right?
It's wild. It's been a wild ride.
tell me, have you got young children that are going to move into the business and take over from or help you out and take over from you?
Oh yeah, she was packing boxes all summer, my daughter, and, and she helps me with my social
Good.
media, which is great. And then my sister's daughters, they harvest, and it's not uncommon for us to find potions, like, "Hey, I made this," and it's pretty cute in their bedrooms and so forth. So, it is. It's really sweet.
Oh, well, thank you
Wonderful.
so
Well,
much.
thanks
Thank
so
you
much,
again,
Jody.
Jodi. And until next time, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.